Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another Shropshire church. This is another church in that area between Shifnal and Bridgnorth. This is St Chad's, Stockton. As the dedication to St Chad suggests, this is quite an old church. The oldest parts of the present building are Norman. St Chad is the founder of Lichfield Diocese. He's one of the early Christian missionaries in this area. He's buried at Lichfield, and therefore dedication to St Chad is a sign of an older church in this area. For the most part, obviously, in the Victorian era, all bets are off, but this is a historic church. Now, there is no village of Stockton, really. There's a few houses, that's it. Down the hill is Norton, and Norton is, of course, means the north farmstead or township. Stockton is up on the hill, and what's happened is that the main centre of settlement has just shifted down the hill. Being up on a hill can be a bit uncomfortable, particularly in the winter. This church is particularly associated with Apley Park, and we'll see some of the memorials and things to do with the big house when we go around. So let's do that, have a little bit of a nose around. And so, as usual, we start at the west end. The font here is 15th century, quite a good example. It's one of these ones where you look at, you go, which end is the top, but you can tell because of the direction of the carving, and also, of course, which way up it is at the moment. Here we have memorial to William Orme Foster of Apley Park, died 1899, and it's this window up here that is his memorial window. The light is automatic, I can't do anything about that. And we have here, now the church was restored in 1859 or so, and therefore the interior is much of that period. There is Norman work in the walls, but none of it's visible, partly because of the rubbish stone that was used locally. And the reality is, rubbish stone, it's local stone, what else can you use? We have a very nice wagon roof here. You see this sort of curved wooden roof. And this is memorial to the Reverend Henry James Wilkinson, rector of this parish, who went into rest September 25th, 1903, aged 54 years. He was minister here 15 years, holding forth the word of life, which is, of course, what ministers are supposed to do. We have, this is a cruciform building, which is quite unusual. It's a simpler type of cruciform building. It is a cruciform building. You can see here there aren't arches. The arch here is Victorian, and so, of course, these wooden pieces are largely Victorian. The pulpit is a really nice piece of woodwork. It's a nice Jacobean piece. That's St Chad, of course, in the window there. Here we have memorials to the Goldburns, Cuthbert Goldburn, Brigadier, 8th Hussars of Udness, who died in 1919. Edward Henry Goldburn, Major General Grenadier Guards, Apley Park, died in 1980. Arthur William Foster, Major Royal Horse Guards, Apley Park, died 1960. William Henry Foster, Apley Park, died in 1924. So yes, all these memorials to do with the family there. Nice chancel. You can see you've got these triple lancet windows. It's not old, but it's in sort of, well, in very much an early English style. Interesting here, this is the reading desk. And you can see originally it would have been part of a three-decker. That's another part, and they've taken the three-decker apart, but they've kept the pieces, which is very nice. All too often they just took them down and destroyed them. Now, looking west, we can see again the tower arch is, well, no, tower arch is medieval. Seating, the wall panelling may incorporate old box pews. They often do. Very nice carving on that. Organ, again, one of the things that you get around here, some very nice organs, because you've got these big house families. So who's this by? This is another Walker organ, 1891. So probably ordered at the same time, around the same time as the organ for Sutton Maddock. We have a nice communion table. I mean, look at that. It's a nice communion table, obviously firmly fixed. And here actually is the Norman work. Now, Norman window, now obviously the surround is not Norman, but the actual window opening itself is, which is interesting. Again, these are Victorian, we've got these knights here. A nice, well, reasonable east window. And there we have St. John and St. Luke. So over here we must have St. Mark and St. Matthew, but you can't see them because the sun's in the way. And then here we have a memorial. There's going to be another one of the Apley Park memorials. And this here is to George Whitmore, who was for 30 years rector of this parish. This is the old low side window. You'll see in some guidebooks, including the one here actually, them described as leper windows. They were not. And there weren't that many lepers in medieval England. They wouldn't be allowed actually this close to, they wouldn't be allowed up to churches in service time in case someone wandered out and met one. Now the low side window, as far as we can tell, they had some other function. Probably at Mass you'd have somebody would ring a bell out of it so people would know the Mass was going on. It wouldn't be the Masses when people were supposed to be here, but Masses in the week. The back end of the reading desk, very good that they kept it. We have there the an east window. Christ is risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. And then we've got some nice tiled flooring. You can see some tiles actually. I have to look at the tiles in here because they would have been made locally. And again, some of it's been obscured by carpet, but there is more visible tile. There are more visible tiles here. This is very much, of course, a rural area. It would have been, folk would have trekked up from Norton to worship here, and then, of course, the family would have come from the big house, probably sat in one of the transepts, because that's what you did with transepts. The family needed somewhere. After they've probably been in this one, which has most of their memorials in it. The obvious point, because you sit near the memorials of your illustrious forebears. So that's the inside here at Stockton. We'll have a look around the outside. Incidentally, before I go, and while I remember, there's a very nice farm shop at Stockton, produce from the Apley estate. So if you're ever in the area, it's not just a matter of there's a nice church on the hill, but there's also a very nice farm shop basically across the road, although it is a very busy road. And so we're outside at Apley. I'm sorry I'm in the shade of a tree, but there we go. Still in the shade of a tree. Outside, and I've mentioned before about the local stone from this exact area being basically rubbish. And this means that it has to be refaced every so often, and we see that very much with the nave here. It's all been refaced in that 1858-9 restoration. And you've got this parapet that's been out at the time too. So it's this very bright red colour, and it's a different colour from the tower, which is actually using better stone, and is, of course, the tower is 15th century, so it's later. So we'll have a look around the outside, and again the usual salient remarks. So here we are outside at Stockton. This is the medieval church. Of course, the base does look medieval. It's been restored above there in the 19th century. Quite a common thing to do. Again, you've got this bright red, basically, and you see there, that eagle, that is a genuine gargoyle. Now, gargoyles, I've mentioned it in previous videos, but gargoyles are not just these grotesques on the side of the building, they are decorative water spouts, and the idea is that that eagle will vomit forth water when it rains. You can see there's a medieval gargoyle up on the tower here. Nice bit of 15th century work, and it's a different stone. You can see where it's been patched in places, but the nave was older, and so all this has all been refaced. There is medieval work, Norman work even, underneath, but of course, because it is this rubbish local stone, and that's not just insulting the local stone, it is just not very tough. But here we are, you can see that's the medieval cross base, and then the actual cross shaft and the cross on top are Victorian. Medieval crosses tended, in fact, not to be, or they might have, in fact, at the top, in fact, often they did have at the top a sculpture of the crucifixion with on the other side the Virgin Mary, and then some saints on the other two sides. But there we have that lovely, sort of gingerbread colour stone on the nave, and you can see it's weathering already, but it's absolutely necessary to have this refacing, because before it was refaced it would have looked really, really rubbish. Another gargoyle there. This is a griffin type gargoyle, and we'll see here that you've got the other gargoyle. What makes a gargoyle? It's the water spout, and they've generally been protected, and I believe that this chap here is also a gargoyle, because he appears to have a water spout in his mouth. But that is the low side window, and because it's been exposed on the outside, you can see the weathering effect on that red sandstone, and it's really a very soft stone. There's the priest's door. There was a rectory. Obviously the rectory now is in private hands, as so many of these old rectories are, partly because of the expense of keeping them up, partly because it was seen as a fairly good way to make a little bit of money by the C of E. But that lich gate over there is the entrance to the churchyard extension, because the churchyard filled up, as they are wont to do. There's the door into the vestry, very important. And the idea basically being that the priest could, or that the clergyman could go into his vestry without having to trek through the church, which, if you've got muddy boots, which you might have in a rural parish like this, is very helpful. There's the churchyard extension over there. So here we are on the north side. And you can see there that triple lance at east window, and that rather flamboyant battlement effect, that parapet. And the tower would originally have had pinnacles on the four corners, but they have weathered and become unsafe, and so they have been taken down, because the last thing you want is for part of your church to go and fall on somebody. Not a very good advertisement for the church. Here's that lich gate I gave a distant view of, and churchyard extension. I mean, you look at those big memorials, they've got to be the big house family, who of course would have been very generous. Now, I mentioned these pinnacles that used to be on the tower, and we can see what happened to them. But there we are, an external door to the staircase there. That's sun over the church, because the north side is normally in shadow. The south side is where the sun normally. So the pinnacles, there they are, pinnacles, because when they were taken off, they were recycled, and they're now down here being decorative, because that's what pinnacles are for. They're being decorative. So that is St Chad's, Stockton. And so here we are outside finally. Well, sorry, here we are, end of the journey, end of the tour. I'm not going to re-record after doing that. And you see the beautiful building, refaced, 15th century tower. There's a Norman church in here somewhere, and it's up here on its hill, normally open. And again, if you're in the area, this church and the last two, and there's several others that make a good little day out up here. And of course there's interesting places at Cosford. There's the RAF Museum. Bridgnorth is, well, Bridgnorth. Telford, you've got Ironbridge Museums, plural. So much to see up here in Shropshire, and of course gorgeous countryside. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.